The rough wooden door of the cell slammed shut, and Sheriff Brody finally felt the day's tension ease. He'd caught her, the young Cherokee girl accused of rustling cattle from the Miller Ranch. She sat on the narrow cot, her silence more unsettling than any protest would have been. He felt a pang of something he couldn't name, not pity exactly, but a weariness that went bone deep. She was so young to be on this side of the bars. Acting on an instinct he hadn't examined, he grabbed a tin cup, filled it from the water barrel in his office, and brought it to the cell. Her small hands took it without a word, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm your prisoner," she said, her voice softer than he expected, carrying no trace of fear. Brody nodded, his hand resting on the Colt at his hip, a familiar weight of authority. But as she moved to place the cup on the floor, the simple calico dress she wore shifted at the collar. For a fraction of a second, his lawman's eyes caught something out of place. A folded piece of paper, weathered and familiar, tucked neatly into the fabric. His blood ran cold. He saw his own face staring back, grim and unshaven from a life lived years ago. $5,000, it read. Wanted, dead or alive. If this story has you on the edge of your seat already, hit that like button. We're just getting started, and this tale of forbidden desire is about to get a whole lot more dangerous. The girl looked up, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face as she saw the recognition dawning in his eyes. "No, Sheriff," she whispered, the words hitting him like a physical blow. "You're mine." Disbelief was a luxury he couldn't afford. He drew his Colt, the click of the hammer a deafening sound in the small, stifling office. "Who in the hell are you?" The smile never left her face. She was a predator, and he had foolishly walked into her cage. "My name is Tala," she said, her voice smooth as polished stone, "and I've come a very long way to collect a debt." Brody kept the gun steady, but his mind was racing. The bounty was a ghost, a remnant of his time as a Pinkerton man, a life he thought he'd buried under the weight of a tin star and years of peace. "This is my town. You're in my jail." She laughed, a low, chilling sound that had no humor in it. "Is it?" she asked softly. "Two of my partners are sitting in the saloon across the street, watching this office. Another is in the livery. If they see me dragged out of here in chains, well, your town will pay a price for that debt too." The threat wasn't loud or boastful. It was stated as a simple, undeniable fact. He was outmaneuvered. The hunter had become the hunted. Brody slowly, reluctantly, lowered his gun. The weight of his past had finally caught up to him, and it came in the form of a beautiful, terrifying woman sitting in his own jail cell. She watched him, her eyes dark and calculating, seeing the war raging behind his weary expression. "Now," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we have some business to discuss, Sheriff, and it starts with you telling me everything you know about a man named Jedediah Kane." The name hit him harder than the bounty poster had. Jedediah Kane. The man who had set him on this path to begin with. The man he'd left for dead in a desert canyon 10 years ago. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy as the afternoon heat. Brody's mind, trained by years of reading men, tried to dissect her. She wasn't a common bounty hunter. There was no greed in her eyes, only a cold, hard fire that burned with purpose. He holstered his Colt, a gesture of truce that was anything but. "Jedediah Kane is dead," Brody said, the words tasting like a lie even as he spoke them. "I killed him a decade ago." Tala's expression didn't flicker. "You left him for dead. There's a difference. Kane didn't just survive, Sheriff. He prospered." She leaned forward, the intensity in her gaze pulling him in. For years, he built a small empire in the Northern Territories, using a different name. But a man like that can't hide his nature forever. 6 months ago, his men rode through the Cimarron Valley, my home. The story spilled from her then, not in a torrent of anger, but in a quiet, devastatingly calm narrative. Kane, hungry for the silver rumored to be on tribal land, had made an example of her village. He'd burned it to the ground, slaughtering anyone who stood in his way, including her father, the chief. She alone had escaped, carrying with her the story of their end. The bounty on your head was a ghost, but it was the only link I could find to the man you were before you were a sheriff. The only man who knew Kane's face, who knew how he thought. I'm not here for the $5,000, Sheriff. I am here for him. The bait had been the bounty, but the trap was his own conscience. Brody felt the carefully constructed walls of his new life begin to crumble. The peace he had built in this dusty town was paid for by the violence he'd left unfinished in his past. His failure to kill Kane 10 years ago had led directly to the destruction of Tala's world. This was his debt to pay, not hers. The decision solidified in his gut, heavy and absolute. "What's your plan?" he asked, the question itself an oath. Kane bought the old Black Creek mine 2 months ago. He has a dozen men, all of them hard cases. Getting to him won't be easy. He considered this, his lawman's mind mapping out the challenges, the odds. He chose to stand for justice, knowing it could destroy him. If you believe one voice can make a difference, comment, "I believe in justice." Their fragile alliance was interrupted by a sharp knock on the doctor's office door. "Sheriff, you in there?" It's Deputy Miller. A good kid, but not someone built for this kind of storm. Brody shot Tala a warning glance before turning to the door. "Just finishing up some paperwork, Dan. Be out in a minute." The footsteps retreated. The close call was a stark reminder of the tightrope they were walking. Their operation had to be invisible. But Tala's next words shattered any hope of a quiet, calculated plan. "We don't have time to be careful," she said, her eyes now dark with urgency. "My man in the saloon just got word. Kane's payroll wagon is due to arrive at the mine tonight, under heavy guard. But Kane himself is riding ahead of it. He'll be at the mine, waiting, alone. It's the only chance we'll ever get." The ticking of the clock on his wall seemed to grow louder. Each second a hammer blow, counting down to a reckoning he could no longer escape. The Black Creek mine was a scar carved into the mountainside, a place of deep shadows and whispering wind. They moved like ghosts through the darkness. Brody's frontier skills and Tala's warrior stealth, a seamless, silent partnership. A single light burned in the main office. Inside, Jedediah Kane stood over a map, a phantom from Brody's past made flesh. He was older, grayer, but the same cruel arrogance was etched on his face. When Brody stepped through the door, Kane looked up and for a moment saw a ghost of his own. A flicker of shock, then a slow, mocking smile. "Well, I'll be damned," Kane sneered. "Came back to finish the job, Pinkerton?" Before Brody could answer, Tala stepped from the shadows, her face a mask of cold fury. Recognition dawned in Kane's eyes. "The chief's daughter. You've been a busy little girl." Kane lunged for the gun on his desk, but he was a step too slow. Brody's shot was precise, a surgeon's strike, taking the man in the shoulder and sending him staggering back. The fight was short, brutal, and utterly without honor. It ended with Kane on his knees, disarmed, a look of pathetic disbelief on his face. He stared up at Brody, expecting the final killing shot from the man who'd haunted him for years. But Brody didn't move. He looked at Tala, whose breathing was ragged, her hands clenched into fists. This was her justice to claim. She stepped forward, her father's knife now in her hand. "This is for the Cimarron Valley," she whispered, and drew the blade across Kane's throat. Brody watched, ensuring the life faded completely from the man's eyes. This time, there would be no mistakes. They rode away as the first sounds of the approaching payroll wagon echoed up the canyon. They didn't speak for miles, the silence filled only by the clip-clop of their horses' hooves. The violence of the night had washed something clean between them, leaving behind a stark, undeniable truth. They were the same. Both were survivors of a past that refused to stay buried. As the first light of dawn painted the eastern sky, Brody reined in his horse at the edge of the town. He looked at the familiar buildings, the quiet streets, a life that no longer fit. With a slow, deliberate motion, he unpinned the tin star from his chest, its silver glinting in the new light. He held it for a moment, the weight of a lie in his palm, and then let it fall into the dust. Tala watched him, her expression unreadable. Her revenge was complete, her purpose fulfilled. She was free. "What will you do now?" she asked, her voice soft. Brody looked out at the open range, at the endless horizon that promised nothing but uncertainty. For the first time in years, he felt the thrill of it, a second chance. "The name on that poster. I think it's time I answered for it," he said, not with regret, but with a newfound sense of resolve. He turned to face her, a question in his eyes he didn't need to ask. A slow smile touched Tala's lips, the first genuine smile he had ever seen from her. "A man with a $5,000 bounty on his head shouldn't ride alone," she said. He nodded, and together they turned their horses away from the town, two ghosts riding into the sunrise, leaving their pasts to be buried in the dust along with the tarnished tin star.